think if there's no further discussion on this, we move to our next speaker. And next speaker is Dr. Aida Teferra. So Dr. Aida, she received her Dr. MD, Doctor of Medicine from Addis Ababa University. She completed her residency in psychiatry at St. Paul Millennium Medical College in Addis. And she's now the chair of the psychiatry department at Al-Kochebe General Hospital, which is actually dedicated. Most of the service of this hospital is related to mental health. So it's really pioneering work doing that hospital. She supervised inpatient service, which comprise over 150 beds at that hospital. And they serve over 5 million people around that catchment area. So it's one of the big one. She's a member of the National Medical Health and Psychosocial Support Advisory Council. So she has up-to-date information what's going on in the country, especially in the conflict area. So thank you, Dr. Aida. I will look forward to hear your talk.
Thank you, Professor Tesfaye, for the kindness of the introduction. I'll share my slides now. So these are my topics that I'll be discussing. So I'll give you a brief introduction about resilience. I'll try to see the different definition of resilience. We'll see about determinants of resilience, and also discuss upon some of the effective ways to enhance resilience, and also touch upon community resilience. And I'll briefly go and see about the source of resilience in the current Ethiopian context. And finally, we'll take a look on some courage stories, inspiring stories from people who have been through the war. So as an introduction, stress is a reality of our daily life, but people will be exposed to certain amount of stress or even potentially life-threatening adversities which can affect their well-being. So these adversities, it could be interpersonal violence, it could be trauma, it could be death or natural disasters. I try to show you this picture that the woman is on this unstable board and also juggling a boat. So, people go through such difficulties in life. It's a fact of life, but it does not have to be a life sentence. This is by Peter Levine, a biophysicist and a psychologist from UC Berkeley. So he urges people to pass through trauma in a way that it does not shake their whole stability and their well-being. And one fact about the human brain is that it has a unique ability to form newer connections and change structurally in response to new experiences. This is what we refer to the post-traumatic growth. So the human brain has this capacity or this resilience to go through trauma. Of course, there will be some rough patches, but the brain can make it through emotional difficulties and psychological difficulties. So the conflict in the northern part of Ethiopia has brought about immense amount of crisis, both psychological, social, economic, and you name it. but the mental health and psychosocial problem is on the rise, as it was stated by my colleagues at ALERT and at Ministry of Health, Dr. Nahum and Dr. Gannet. They have been witnessing what's going on the ground. And this study was done in 2020 at Geda zone from the internally displaced people at Geda zone, and it has shown that there is a significant amount of the magnitude and prevalence of depression, anxiety, trauma is on the rise. So people who are living in these conflict-affected areas, they are prone to develop post-traumatic stress. So does that mean they are, are they sentenced to live by that diagnosis, or what's going to happen to them? So that's when the issue of resilience will take the bigger picture. So in defining resilience, it's a process. It's a process to harness resources to sustain overall well-being. So there are different kinds of resilience. There is the mental resilience, the emotional resilience, psychological resilience, economic resilience, political resilience, etc. So, but here for today's talk, I will just be focused on mental and psychosocial resilience, rather. So even the mental and the psychosocial resilience will be defined in various number of ways by different scholars. So, I just want you to understand that resilience, it's a process. It's not a state of being, or it's not something that is endowed. Okay, so it's a process. People will go through a certain X kind of experience, and they will develop some kind of maturity through that experience, and it will shape their brain and their behavior in a certain way, so that when they're faced with another issue sometime in the future, they'll be able to develop a healthy functioning. Bonanno also define resilience that it's a stable trajectory for healthy functioning after an adverse event. So the trajectory is characterized by a relatively brief period of disequilibrium, where the mind and the body will navigate to find equilibrium. Okay, so most people will have this ability to find and navigate this equilibrium, but some people will have the tendency to develop post-traumatic stress. So the other definition is a capacity of a dynamic system, to adapt successfully to disturbances that threaten the viability, function, and development of the system. So this is a much wider definition of resilience, which takes into account, different issues like the health system, the socio-political condition, the geographic condition, etc. But from my research, I like this definition of resilience, because it is kind of holistic. So in the context of exposure to significant adversity, resilience is the capacity of individuals or groups, to navigate their way to the psychological, social, cultural, and physical resources that sustain well-being, and their capacity in individual or at a group level to negotiate and to be able to to get these resources in a culturally meaningful manner. So I want you to to emphasize on this culturally meaningful way, because when we are talking about resilience, as I said, it's an interplay. I will show you later on the factors, because it's an interplay between different factors, and one of that is culture. So we need to be culturally sensitive when we talk about people's resilience, because resources are different for different groups of people. Because the resources or the issues that that come into the context of resilience in Ethiopia and in Afghanistan, it's quite different. So we need to be culturally informed when we talk about resilience. All right. So here, resilience, it takes into account different aspects of health holistically, or well-being in general, because emotional health, mental health, social, spiritual, and physical health all make a person who they are or who they want to be in the future. And the experiences that people face in different sorts of stages of their life, it can't touch all these categories of life: social, spiritual, physical, etc. And that in turn will lead to the person being being shaped into a certain type of character or resilience. So these are some of the determinants that come into the interplay of somebody being resilient. So genetic factors, epigenetic factors, of course, DNA plays a role in some people being, really smart, really tough, and etc. When they are faced with different kinds of experiences. So one experience which is really difficult to process for somebody, it may not be as such difficult for the other person to process. That could be, that could be because of course, psychological makeup, their exposure, etc. But genetics also, and epigenetics also has an important role to play. And in terms of development, especially during infancy and childhood, children who are well cared for, who are being protected, or who have been raised in a highly protected environment, they could be resilient during the infant period and etc. But they may have issues when they grow up, when they leap into the adulthood, they could have issues. So development also plays a role. Demography is what I was trying to refer to earlier. People's place where they reside. Because when we talk about resilience, we are discussing about issues, that can hamper or that can hinder a person's well-being, and that could be, the natural, the nature, or for example, somebody living in a desert and somebody living, in a very in a good way, they don't have equal resilience, right? So because nature tends to shape our genetics and epigenetics. Culture is also another factor. I mentioned that earlier because, especially in terms of trauma, for example, in the Ethiopian context, in the Ethiopian culture, we have a very good place for the clergymen, for the priests, and etc. And in such cases where people are facing traumatic experiences, they tend to to dwell, or they tend to be attached to whatever the teaching of the church. So that, or the mosque, or any religious belief. So that culture will tend to shape the resilience nature of the society at large. Economic and social also, people living in a country where there is a better economy, better political system, etc., they are better able to be resilient whenever there is, natural disaster, a war, etc., rather than the people who are living in a disadvantaged society. So these are some of the determinant factors. So what are some of the factors that enhance resilience at an individual level? Most of the speakers before me, they have talked about this connection, cohesion, etc. So these are very important things that one needs to have. To be resilient whenever something bad happens in their life. So in connection, it means that people, if they have a meaningful relationship with their significant others, with their family and friends, it's a means of being resilient. And also engagement in different faith-based organizations, engagement at charity organizations or schools, etc. These are also some very important factors when faced with adversity in life. And in terms of communication, being able to share, explain and explore what has happened to them is really a very important skill. And also being able to reframe the adversity or whatever that has happened to them is a very important ability. And also having clear insights and also judgment about the scenario, the condition, helps the person to be more resilient. And also the third is confidence. It's a positive view of the self and a positive view for the world, and also having accurate sense of one's ability, and also believing that that individual can influence the outcome of the condition that they are facing through. The other is competency and commitment. So here is this is the ability to look at the big picture, to look past the trauma, past the life adversity, and also following through, also not giving up very easily of the commitment, and also working towards the achievement or the goal. So the other is also control. This is being able to manage strong feelings so that we can harness
Hello, we lost you probably. Dr. Aida?
Enhance, can become more productive, and to develop coping, have a very...
Yeah, I think we lost you a while, maybe.
Okay, am I visible now?
You didn't share, the sharing is gone. So maybe you can share, but also we're running out of time. Maybe you can also speed a little bit.
All right. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I was just talking about competence, commitment, and control. These are very important tools for somebody to enhance resilience at an individual level. So at a community level, when we talk about community resilience, community is just a group of individuals. Resilient individuals will form a resilient community. So community resilience is the sustainability of communities to withstand, adapt, and recover from any adversities of life. So what makes a community healthy and resilient is very important to remember that that community is socially connected and they have, good access to health systems. They can act in a collaborative or collective way to mitigate any adversity. They're able to mobilize resources, and also the elders or whoever that's respected in the community, they're able to promote overall well-being. So these are some of the strategies to build a resilient community. We can strengthen and promote access to public healthcare and social services, promote health and wellness along the disaster preparedness, expand communication and collaboration. So engaging at-risk individuals and having, specially tailored program that can serve those individuals, and also building the social fabric or the social connectedness is very important. So this is something that I got from the Trauma Research Institute. So it's basically what I have already said, that to have a resilient community, all these things should come into an interplay. So source of resilience in the current Ethiopian context, for me, I would say that instilling a sense of hope, dignity, and coherence will be critically important for the Ethiopian community to foster resilience, in a country like ours, where it is, in the middle of a war, and also, there is a, rising social crisis. So the religious leaders and also the community elders, they play a very important or key role to promote social cohesion and also belongingness. So with this, I will end my talk, and I will just show you a brief video of I think this person. I have not, it's a public video. It's on YouTube, so that I'm using it. I'm using it also publicly. I'll try just to show you a very short video.
Continue.
All right, so maybe I will just share the video through email or another means. Currently, I'm not able to do any of what you are suggesting. So, so this is basically what I have for you for today. And I'll be glad to accept any comments, suggestions, and questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Sorry, there's somebody unmuted. Maybe you can mute. Thank you so much again, Dr. Aida. It's very, very powerful message in terms of resilience, and especially I really value you thought about culturally, informed approach. All textbooks may not, directly apply to our own conditions. So I think it's very powerful approach. So if there's any question, we can open for discussion. I saw one really important question in the chat. Probably in the West here, so one issue, trauma, maybe some family issue or some other things, personal issue. But in the Ethiopian context, we have war, we have drought, we have famine, and we have all these different things. So how do you address all this in a multi-level approach. So maybe we can have that discussion starting with Professor Yonas.
Thank you. I think, Dr. Aida, I think it is very, very good that you brought up resilience, because sometimes we talk about trauma and then the resilience seems to be forgotten. And I think in the Ethiopian context, I also agree with you, the cultural factor is very important source of resilience. I think the video Dr. Aida was going to show us is a video message where Muslims and Christians were thanking Abuna Ermias. He was a leader of the church in a region called Waldia. So he refused to leave his people. He risked his life. Basically, he could have been tortured or killed. He stayed there, and then he, regardless of the phase of a person, whether Muslims or Christians, he gives them shelter and support, spiritual and material to the extent possible. And that's really a huge source of resilience. And the other story I think she was going to share was, I think it's an audio or video of a father and son in a town called Shoarobit. They refused to abandon their city. They fought to the last, and a few minutes before his death, the father called his brother, who I think his brother is a physician. It's very powerful. And these types of stories, I think, are cultural factors that contribute to the resilience. I think she is sharing it on the chat so people can watch the video. To go back to the question raised by, a very good question was raised by Mazzino Bito, a very nice poetic name. So Mazzino Bito, he has asked, how do we provide mental health service, mental health counseling or service, when a person, when the individual does not even have food to eat, there's no shelter to live in. So basic necessities are lacking. So at least the Sudanese refugees, they were in a camp, they had a shelter, they were in a tent, they had food, they had water. So the basic necessities, without basic necessity, really it's very difficult to process any counseling or intervention. I completely agree with Dr. with Mazen Bito. The question is, how do we, are there these resources so that we always hear, it's honestly the last 2 years we have also faced the reality in the world. So United Nations and others, they will say, we will provide you or flood you with food, with shelter, with anything you want, just do what we tell you, this or that. And then when you meet whatever demands they put, they don't show up with the promise. So I think